One more here.
Okay.
My guest is DavidShurter3. We're talking about Rabbit Hole is the title of his book, and that's available on Amazon and all that, right?
Yes, it is. Amazon and Kindle.
All right. And I had just pulled up a story here called Podocracy. Uncle Sam Wants Your Children. And that's what I was looking at about the Aquino thing. What is their plan? What are there is always something happening here. That there's a plan behind all of this. What are they trying to accomplish? What are they using these children for? What do they use you for? What is there something happening with this whole thing? Is the whole, we've got, I just did a show yesterday talking about the 545 people that control our government. They are the ones that are totally responsible here, not the lobbyists, not the oil company people, not the television people. It's the 545 people that includes those 9 Supreme Court judges, 5 of whom are Jewish, and our whole Congress and our Senate. These politicians have basically sold us out. And when you read the Franklin cover-up, when they talk to you, the people there at the top, sitting in the White House and sitting in the Congress, are the ones that are doing this to our children, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And it's a fear tactic, but it's also domination. But with the children, what you understand with human trafficking is that you steal a child, you can sell that child for sex over and over and over, make an untold amount of cash. When that child starts to act up or is no longer useful to you, you kill the child, you film it, you sell the snuff film for $50,000 overseas. And then, after the child is dead, and you've made money off prostituting the child, and killing the child and making a snuff film, then there's also a multi-billion-dollar illegal organ network. And so you can basically make all kinds of money selling the organs of the child that you just murdered.
Isn't that exactly what's been happening in Gaza, in Gaza on the Strip?
Yep.
Over in Israel. Matter of fact, I just put up on Facebook. And if you go to Facebook and type in Free American, you'll find it. I put up art that was the Israeli TV did a show on an artist, a Palestinian artist, that depicted the Jews as lizards eating children. And they I guess the Jewish media thought that would show how evil the Palestinians were, so they ran the story, but it was actually a lot more truth to that than any artist's imagination.
Yes. Well, art usually imitates reality, doesn't it? And so the reality of the whole situation is that it's not funny, it's real. But a lot of times, people don't want to hear about this situation because it makes them uncomfortable. You start talking about human trafficking and child trafficking, and all of a sudden you see their eyes glaze over and they don't want to hear anymore. And it's that culture of apathy in America that needs to stop. We have chosen to be ignorant. We've chosen to watch television day after day, night after night, and basically, turns our brains to mush. We have televisions. I never watch television. I've never been able to find anything that was interesting on television. And when people start talking about television and television doesn't program me, I always have this analogy that I always tell people: when is the last time on television that you ever saw a fat person selling soap? Fat people need soap more than skinny people, because there's more mass. But when have you ever seen a fat person sell soap? Everyone who's in the shower selling Dial is beautiful, and I don't look like that in the shower. I don't know about anybody else, but I know I don't look like that in the shower. I'm not a model. And when you hear the programming, it's just that kind of thing. You start to think, well, only beautiful people take showers? Well, of course not.
I have a video up, a tape up on my site that was made by North Korea. It's called Propaganda, and it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing because if you can ignore the Chinese in the background and just listen to the voiceover, it's pretty incredible that they got it right down. They got it accurate. They talk about how we are being programmed by the television, by the ads, by those models that you're right now you're talking about. They showed the pictures and they really put it together. And they also identify the banksters as being the one to finance. Of course, our founding fathers told us, if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them, that are funded by them, will leave your children homeless in the land that we conquered. And that's exactly what we've done.
Yep. That's exactly what we've done. We started to take over. I mean, there was a big takeover in the 30s and 40s when we established the Federal Reserve. That was when there was really a big, when we switched the money and we switched it over to corporations and we switched it over to privatizing it, especially in the 80s and 90s. I mean, look at the failed savings and loans when we privatized. And people forget about the savings and loans that crashed. And back then you didn't hear anybody about bailouts. They just crashed. You know, they closed down. Franklin Credit was one of them. And people will say, Franklin Credit, well, they bilked $40 million out of it. Well, do you really think that all these banks just ran out of money? Really?
I just saw a film with Greenspan bragging about, well, we can't default. We can't default because we can print all the money we need.
Yeah. And that's just it. We can print all the money that we need. Of course, the more we print, the less it is worth. But people don't realize that. And there is going to come, I personally believe that I call it the beginning of the beginning. I don't think that we're at the beginning of the end. We're at the beginning of the beginning. And why I say that is because we are getting to the point now, quite simply, how I look at it, especially right now, with the fact that we've had 100-degree temperatures in the Midwest all summer long. Nothing's growing. It's all dying because there's no water. We're going to have to shape up and really connect with each other as a group to survive, because the environment is going to get a lot more harsh. As the temperatures fluctuate back and forth, you know, we're on a water short, we're on a, they basically are asking for a voluntary water break so that people don't water their lawns all day. With everything that's going on, we're going to have to start working together, and the polarization is no longer going to work. In order to get rid of the polarization, the people that are in governments and the people who are in control now, the 500 or so people that you say, you know, are running everything, power is going to need to be taken away from them. Because I personally believe that they would rather burn the world down than lose control over it.
Well, they make money. If they burn the world down, if they use the weapons on us, then guess what? You know, and they've really designated the American people as their enemies now. They're trying to go after the veterans and everything else. And this is usually going after the veterans is the third stage in the communist takeover. The first is taking over the farmers, destroying the farmers because they don't want you being able to feed yourself. That's why we've got corporate farms. Ninth plank on the Communist Manifesto. Can you say Archer Daniels, Midland, and Monsanto?
Yep, exactly.
And I predicted, and it's kind of wishful thinking, that 2012 would be the end of the world, of the banksters' world. And it really is a matter of changing our way of thinking. You know, the basis of our civilization was the self-sufficient family farm. They want the corporate farms, so they are trying to drive. This is what the wildfires, the drought is about. This is more attacks on the farmer. The same way the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico was an attack on our food supply.
Yep.
They are doing this on. They put it in writing that they wanted to. They want to kill off, 2/3 of the American people, or 2/3 of the world people. 500 million manageable.
Well, we're running out of food. We're running out of food. We're running out of resources. There's too many people. The people that I grew up with in the Satanist group used to call people out and about eaters and breeders. And so they're looked at as they just simply eat and breed. That's all they do. That's all they're good for. And so the fact that they're thinking, getting rid of 2/3 of the population, well, I'm telling you that the people who are in control, the rich people who are involved, are so disconnected from the rest of the world that they don't even look at people as people anymore. And we're really starting to see that. I mean, our government, our media, everything is starting to push off to the fact that we're starting to really, there's such a lack of respect for life anymore. And we're losing that. And as we see our children grow up, I know that it has always said that the older generation looks at the younger generation and always says, oh, it's going to the dogs. But when I was growing up, I never had to worry about getting shot at school. I never had to worry about someone bringing bombs to school. I didn't have to worry about this incessant bullying that, I grew up a different person in a small town, Iowa, so I was never really bullied. And so you're getting this lack of life, this lack of respect, and we're getting programmed to really focus on it. Television, how many murders can you watch in one night? I sat down one time and was flipping the station. I watched television for 3 hours, and I think I saw 30 people get murdered on television. And it was just flipping through the stations. Oh, there's another murder. Oh, there's another murder. Oh, there's another one, And that's when they're not inundating us with cop shows and showing, the cops are the great guys and everyone else is the bad guys, and look at the trash that they have to deal with. We are becoming a police state more and more and more, and our propaganda on television is supporting that. And until people start to wake up and start to realize that mind control is something that works. You tell someone, you tell a lie over and over and over to enough people, and if they start to believe it, suddenly that lie becomes truth, or looked at as truth. And that's what we're starting to experience in America right now, is that the lies that they're telling us are starting to appear true, because we don't have the mental capabilities of actually ascertaining what is real and what isn't any longer. And that's because they've dumbed down the schools. When you have 50% of seniors graduating who aren't even at a proficient reading level, what is that going to say for our future generations when we can't even read?
I am not a big fan of our schools, and that's why up on my website I have the link for Timothy Bible College. That same Timothy Bible College runs the Little Red Schoolhouse. That's an online school, so you can homeschool at home, have a professor, supervise your kids, teach them to. But I could read before I went into first grade, man. Why is it so hard for our parents to sit down and read a comic book with their children? They set them in front of that damn TV.
They set them in front of that damn television. Statistics have shown that they're having problems with kindergartners, preschoolers and kindergartners, because they're watching. Don't get me wrong, I think Sesame Street has its place. But what's happening is that our children are wanting to become entertained, and they're going into school thinking that they need to be entertained in school. Well, I don't know about your experience in school, but my experience was, first, it was not entertaining, and second of all, it was a lot of work. And that's what we have taught our kids now, that they need to be entertained. And the teachers, the kids are so out of control because they're so bored because they're not being entertained that the kids can't, or the teachers can't control them. Now, I have two dear friends who are two of my best friends who are teachers, and they comment on this "No Child Left Behind," and what they refer to it as "No Teacher Left Standing," because that's basically what it is. They've taken all of the rights away from the teachers, and the teachers their hands are tied. And so I'm not all a fan for. I'm not all, again, like you, I knew how to read before I even got into kindergarten. And I was a proficient reader when I was in elementary school. And so there's really no reason why people in America should be illiterate. And it's just that we focus, a lot of the people who are illiterate, who aren't making, I just wonder what the statistics are of how many of them can play football. How many of them can play sports but can't read? And that's what we're experiencing. That's one of the things, a good example of what I'm talking about is this whole Penn State scandal. People went on riots because they were going to put they were going to give the football team some consequences for basically having sex with children, and Sandusky having sex with children, and it's going to come out that he was pimping kids to rich donors. It's already been on the internet as well. And so here we have people who are exploding over, oh, we're going to lose our football team, and yet look at what was going on. You would choose football over kids' rights and protecting kids. But that is common everywhere. How much money are we spending for sports, and we're taking more and more money away from education and giving it to sports? So basically, we're just dumbing down the population and giving them games to play. It's like entertainment. We're a nation that's so caught up in being entertained that we can't do anything because we don't have the thought process to actually work our way through it.
Well, I have almost come to the conclusion. Frankly, I'm sick to death of the Patriot movement. The people that are in the Patriot movement probably got in it because they'd already been beaten down. They'd already been ripped off. They became under attack. And once they had nothing left, and then they might start listening. Then they might start trying to figure out how this has been done to them. But as far as working together, and I've told that now. I came up with a plan, and I'm gonna run this by you every day, folks, because it is actually happening now. It's happening now. I designed the plan for Liberty Villages about 10 years ago, because I had a little piece of property, 5 acres, not much, right in the middle of a bunch of ranches, up on a pretty major highway, and used to be a gas station. I took it over, and I made it into a little general store. And I wanted to build my business a little bit, and so I came up with an idea to put a restaurant and some camping on there. I found little cabins you could get for $20,000. Then I found teepees you could get for $5,000. Then I found yurts you could get for $10,000. And I've got half-size houses available that we're going to put on one of our villages in Texas. Tiny Texas houses, been on my show. And basically my rationale was, if you live in the country, you can grow your own food and generate your own electricity. You don't need the government or the banksters for nothing. And immediately after I put that on in my centerfold, somebody tried to kill me. Kept me drugged for 3 months, so I couldn't do a radio show. So when I woke up, I'd lost everything. Now, we've got 160 acres in Oklahoma. We've got 40 acres in Texas, another 40 acres around the corner in Texas. We've got 3 forms of houses. We've got a salvage company that tears down old barns, old fixtures, old homes, and puts it back together again, quality material, in half-size houses. Now, if you can cut your interest payments down to the bank, if you want to pay $1,000 for a $20,000 house, and then give the banks $200,000 for allowing you to sign your name, you can keep living like you're living. But this whole plan could work in 1 square block in your town, if you went around and talked to your neighbors and said, look, we're going to have a meeting here in about a week. We're going to have somebody outline how we could turn our block into a productive, self-sufficient unit. Put a garden in the backyard, solar on the roof, and a wind generator on there. Kick the neighborhood association in the ass if they complain about this, and suddenly your home becomes a income center for you. Now, the foundation of every civilization is a self-sufficient family farm, and the first thing the communists do is go after the family farm. They want to make it a corporate farm. They want to take your property away. They don't want you growing tomatoes in your backyard, or marijuana, or hemp. Now, would that work?
I personally think it would work. I just drove past. We were went up to northern Iowa, and in Iowa these wind machines are big, and we went and saw a person who had one of those wind turbine machines in their front yard, and there were no wires connected to his or any of the neighbors' houses, and so therefore they were all going off of this wind turbine, and they were getting their electricity off the wind turbine. We've also seen people who, I have a small front yard, but people are turning their front yards into gardens. But now there's a law that I just read that has been passed where they're trying to stop people from growing gardens. That is the strangest thing I've ever heard of. But they're saying you're not supposed to do that anymore. And so the fact that they're trying to take away, I think that as neighborhoods, personally myself, I think what you see happening is going to be an inevitability, or inevitable when it happens. Because what's going to happen is that we're all going to have to fall back on each other and support each other and help each other get through what's coming up in these days. Because we have done so much damage to the planet, and the resources are going down so much. I mean, I don't know what the bee situation is like this year, but I know that they were having problems last year with the bees just dying off. And Albert Einstein said that if you separate man from the honeybee, man will starve to death within 44 years. And so we're going to start seeing a problem with starvation in America. Not that we don't already have it, but we're going to start seeing it a lot more.
It's planned right now. We've got weather control. We're in a drought. You know, the water situation's going on all over, folks. And there is an answer to this. We can do aquaponics. We can concentrate, and you know, I mean, the technology's here. I mean, how much do we spend on shipping in gas to ship goods over here from China? How much do we spend? How much do a ship take? And we have the technology that all you got to do is open a vent on the side of the ship, bring water in, process it into hydrogen, and the ship would power itself all the way across, pretty much the same way that we did with using hemp for our sails and ropes.
Yep.
We got the ability. Now I've said the difference. Obama talks about green in America. He did an executive order telling why the government needs to be getting into the rural areas, because there's so much potential in the rural areas. We need to get the government involved in it. I agree with the potential part. I don't agree with the government part.
Well, the government part is only to take control over it. They're starting to see, you know, it was a perfect example. That's the reason why we went into Iraq. Is Iraq wasn't over Saddam Hussein and the Twin Towers. What it is that Iraq has a lot of resources, especially oil, and we wanted it. You know, in Iraq, the pipeline, there's a key pipeline that's in Iraq, and that's what we wanted. We wanted the oil. We're not going in and liberating anybody. I mean, are you kidding me? Who are we liberating?
Where did that oil pipeline run? And all of our bases are stationed along that oil pipeline. Where did that run? Israel.
I'm not sure. Israel. Yeah, Israel, exactly.
Yes, sir. So
Israel is the one who's actually getting us into a lot of the mess. And people are angry because we're not defending Israel, but I'm sorry, but from everything that I've heard about Israel, there is no defense of them. You know,
I think Mel Gibson was right. He just didn't specify the Zionists are responsible for every war, and that comes from the Jews themselves. Benjamin Friedman told us how the Jews set up World War I, World War II, and part of it's Britain too. I mean, it's not just Jews. I mean, the elite hide behind the Jewish people. They hide behind, the Satanists hide behind, like your mother who saved you, right?
Yes. Yes. They hide. And what I have found, especially with the situations that I'm under, is that you can't trust anything. You have to have an open mind and think outside of the box with all of this. And you really have to, you know, reorganize and read. I think, like with Franklin, there needs to be a complete reinvestigation of it. I think that'll happen because of Penn State. And so what we're starting...
Let me just stop you for just a second and tell people that they tried that and they ended up putting the children that were abused and testified and tried to reveal it, they put them in jail.
Yes, they did. Alicia Owen was actually in solitary confinement longer than anybody for her type of crime. And basically what she said was that she was having Robert Wadman's baby, and they, instead of taking, well, back then DNA wasn't a big thing. It wasn't even available. But instead of taking the words of the kids, Alicia Owen was probably the biggest victim on this. She went to jail for the most. She was really caught up in a hard situation. And she went after Robert Wadman, and instead of investigating their claims, they decided that what they were trying to do was craft an elaborate hoax, and they went after the victims instead of going after the people who were perpetrators. And this is big even now in Omaha. Our elected mayor right now, Tuttle, his right-hand man that helped him get elected was also involved with the Franklin credit scandal. He was accused by a boy named Brad Fugely, and Brad ended up so-called committing suicide a week after making a formal complaint to the police, which is common. If you're not put in jail, you end up dead of a suicide.
We've had more Vietnam vets, and I say, you know, the third people they go after are the veterans. We've had more Vietnam vets, and now it's happening to Iraqi vets and Afghani vets commit suicide than were killed over in the wars. I think that is a national tragedy, and it's one of the things that I want to make it mandatory for every Liberty Village to house at least a half a dozen vets, so that way they can protect the place, mend the fences, milk the goats, gather a few eggs up, pull some weeds out of the garden, and have a room and board instead of sleeping on a street corner.
Well, that's, you know, the whole thing about it is that there's this big propaganda of support our troops, support our troops, support our troops. Well, if you really know the story, basically what they should say is support our troops that are still fighting, because the minute they get hurt, they're dumped. They're left with no recourse. They don't get Social Security. They don't get paid. The government is trying to screw them every way possible. And when the conversation that I had with a friend who is actually an ex-serviceman, at the time he said there were close to 500,000 men, women who were coming home with their limbs blown off or their brains scrambled because of bombs and all of that, and they're getting no help from our government. And so it's support our troops until you get hurt, and then screw you. You go find somebody else to help you out, you know? And I just think that it's terrible. It's so hypocritical that we're saying support our troops, and yet the minute they get hurt, we just dump them. And that's what our government is doing, is that they're not helping these people who are coming home hurt.